There are generally far fewer classroom management issues in a class that bonds together well. Classes that feel more like a collection of individuals, or even worse, classes that have groups of friends within the class that reject others that are not part of their groups, are much more likely to have classroom management issues. We need to try to create a community where the children bond together well and enjoy spending time together and enjoy learning together. There are many ways to build a class community both inside and outside the classroom. One of the best ways is to have class social events. These can be events in the classroom like celebrating Halloween or having a class party, or events outside the class such as playing sports together, going camping together, or doing anything that encourages a class to bond together. When you are teaching a class and you feel that the children are not bonding together very well, it is generally a good idea to do more whole class activities, such as singing songs together, working on projects together, or playing cooperative language games, where all the children are playing together. We may also need to play games or do projects where groups of friends are naturally broken up while doing the activities. And of course, our style of teaching plays an important role in building a sense of community. We need to teach in a way that includes the quieter children and the more energetic children, and the children who are better at English and weaker at English. And perhaps most important of all, we need to have fun with the children. Avoid generalizations and labeling. If we categorize a group of children, or if we label individual children, we shouldn't be surprised if many of them are badly behaved. If we relate to the children as real people, and if each of them feels we care about them as unique individuals, then we can begin to teach effectively. It is so convenient to think of a child as an extrovert, or badly behaved, or a visual learner. But these labels will often restrict her ability to change and develop. Some of these categories have respected research to back them up, such as introverts and extroverts and dyslexic. And it is very important for us to try to understand this research and use our understanding to help a child who has serious problems. But we need to avoid quickly compartmentalizing a child as belonging in a particular category. It is best to see the children as having all kinds of potential abilities and all kinds of directions they can move in. They do not need to be restricted by labels or by their or our perceptions of their ability or behavior up to this point. It is an important part of our role as a teacher to help the children put the past behind them, put the labels they have been given by others behind them, and encourage them to have an unfettered belief that in our lessons, anything is possible. One of the worst things we can do is listen to other teachers' judgments about the children in our class. If another teacher says a child is badly behaved, don't listen. Children can behave quite differently according to who they are with and what they are doing. Let's believe in all the children and let them start afresh in each lesson. Self-fulfilling prophecies. So much of what we believe about a child becomes true. We may take expectations into the very first lesson, especially if we have been influenced by a child's previous teacher, and we may easily categorize a child if she reminds us of an apparently similar child in another class, seems to react negatively to us, dresses in a certain way, has particular mannerisms, or does poorly on a test. If we deeply believe all our children have wonderful potential as learners of English, there is a much better chance they will do well. We need to question any expectations we have that will restrict the children. We also need to do what we can to prevent the other children in the class from categorizing individual children. The opinions and expectations of other children in the class can have a great influence on a child's expectations about herself. Look at bad behavior through a child's eyes. What one child thinks is bad behavior may be very different from another child's view. The children come from a wide variety of backgrounds and have been exposed to different values and different examples set by the adults and friends around them. I think we need to be especially aware of this when teaching children from a different culture from our own. We need to understand what a child sees as being good or bad behavior, and look closely at what a child may mean or is trying to achieve when she behaves in a way that we consider to be unacceptable. Is she deliberately causing trouble, or is she just boisterous? Is she behaving in a way that adults or friends around her outside class would tolerate? Or is she well aware that what she is doing is wrong? Whole class problems. Teachers often talk about a particular class being difficult, but it is most likely that the problems are caused by a small number of children whose influence is gradually becoming pervasive. It is generally only if we do nothing much to address this problem that the whole class becomes involved. Most children want the security that comes from a positive classroom atmosphere, but do not have enough experience in life to know how to avoid confrontation when things start to move in a negative direction, and do not know how to positively influence the behavior of other children. As adults, we have much more experience in life, and if we use this experience well, we can avoid individual problems becoming class problems. Once a whole class problem has developed, we need to develop strategies and set goals to work towards solutions, in the same way as when dealing with problems with individual children. We need to find the cause of the problem before deciding on what action to take. The answer usually involves dealing with the individual problems of the children who were the initial cause of the class problem, and making real human contact with children who are charismatic or respected by the other children, and getting the class refocused on learning English. It is usually important to identify ringleaders and get them on our side. Focus on the behavior. If we do need to talk with a child, it is very important to comment on her behavior, but not criticize her as a person. We should separate her from her behavior, showing her that we still believe in her and like her, but stressing that her behavior is not acceptable. If possible, we should reach an agreement with her about what action to take from now. For example, if she hit or bullied another child, we may want to get her agreement that she should apologize. We are more likely to get her cooperation if we treat her as somebody we respect and care about, and if we show that we know she is a much better person than her behavior suggests. Find a catalyst to refocus a class. I'll tell you a story. Many years ago, I took over a class that was complete chaos. Almost all the children were badly behaved, and they were not focused on learning English at all. One or two children spent most of the time running around the room. Others would jump on the tables. Some would sit silently. They didn't even seem to get along well together. Each of them was behaving badly in their own way. I tried everything I could think of, but couldn't find the catalyst that would refocus the class. There is usually some activity that sparks a change in the attitude of the class, but I couldn't find it. Then one day, the class was having a party with some other classes. The children were in a large room, and each class was playing a different game. My class was playing the fish race game. In this game, each of the children draws a fish on a piece of paper, cuts out the fish, and puts it on the floor behind a starting line. Each child then flaps behind her fish with a piece of card, a magazine, or a notebook, and tries to move her fish forwards. Once the children get into the game, they try to improve the aerodynamics of their fish by putting flaps on them, making them bigger or smaller, or changing the shape. This was the first time I had seen the class working together on an activity, and the first time I had seen their eyes shining with excitement. Of course, it may have been because their fish were going all over the room and destroying the games being played by the other classes. I realized that this was a chance to turn the class around and get the children to work together. So when the children came into class for the next lesson, I was sitting at a table and had pieces of paper, scissors, and colored pencils in front of me. When the children started running around and jumping up and down, I ignored them. I just smiled happily and concentrated on making a fish. After a short time, one or two of the children came over to see what I was doing. They were wondering why I was ignoring them and were curious about what I was doing. I gestured for them to go away and leave me alone. If I had gestured for them to come to me, they would have gone away. They soon realized I was drawing a fish and got excited because of their memories of the party. I teased them by saying it was my game, not theirs, and told them to go away. They were soon all gathered round and excitedly asking to play the fish race game. And finally I said, "Oh, okay." Each of them made a fish. I then looked around the room and scratched my head to indicate that I was wondering how they were going to play. The party room had been a wide open space, but this classroom was full of tables and chairs. They saw the problem and quickly realized they needed to clear the furniture to the side of the room. It was the first time I had seen them cooperate and tidy the room. I then looked worried again, pointing at the number of children and the width of the space available for the game. They realized they couldn't all flap their fish at the same time, and suggested teams. At this point, they were positive enough and pleased with me enough for me to be able to introduce extra rules. The game we played was a relay race. One child stood at a distance from the rest of her team with a pile of flashcards. She asked the front child in her team a target question, for example, "What is it?" about the card. The front child answered and flapped her fish once. The child with the cards asked the same question about the next card, and the front child answered and flapped her fish again. When the front child reached the child with the cards, she took over the pile of cards, and the child who had previously been holding the cards went to the back of her team. The teams raced against each other in this way. Of course, I had chosen the cards and had mixed in some new vocabulary. When one of the teams came across one of these new words, they reacted, "Huh?" and got anxious because the other team was racing ahead. The first time this happened, I gestured for the children to ask me, and they asked me excitedly, "What is it?" From then on, each time a team came across a word they didn't know, they would attract my attention, saying something like, "David, what is it?" If their team was doing well, I answered slowly, and if their team was losing, I answered quickly. I also made sure that new words reappeared a number of times in the game. The second time, they may need to ask me again what a word is, but after that, they could generally remember the new words. Through the game at the party, and through this game in the class, the children began to have a sense of community. They also found that the surprise of encountering new words while playing the game made the game more interesting. So they came to realize that learning English and having fun could be one and the same thing. They didn't become angels overnight. It took time. But I had found the catalyst. I will look at praise and rewards in a separate series of videos on positive discipline.